bench at UVic. There's a daffodil sitting on it. Looks very inviting. It's part of the idea of UVic as a destination in place. And many of our administrators like to sort of work towards that model. They want to come to our campus. We have a nice campus. Come sit on our benches in order to have that learning community. Come sit into the classrooms and engage that way. Although when we actually do learning, we move all over the place. We learn mobile, we learn at our home offices, we learn in varying places. This is one little image of what my daughter thinks I do, just if you're wondering what to expect today. It's a little image of mom going on a plane, landing in a city, and then here's mom, people around, tables, blah, blah, totally blah. We're going to need to find more, blah, blah, so let's do more blah, blah. So this is what we're going to go around today. And I'll try not to talk in the Charlie Brown sort of voice, but yeah, so we are mobile. We're moving around, we're engaging in discourse face-to-face in a variety of locations and a variety of places online as well. So this is an example of a university classroom, and we're sitting in one right now as well. So the idea and the model that we have predominantly is that you must be able to be what we've heard before referred to as a bum and seat. So moving away from infrastructure, we need to look at other ideas of what is a seat. How can learners join in that seat? So hopefully this will work correctly. This is a Google map zoomed in on where that picnic bench is, or that bench at UVic is located. Oops, no. Let me click. Before. There we go. So if we zoom out, this is UVic. This is the lower part of Vancouver Island. There are many benches, I'm sure, located in this space, but we're expecting people to come and be able to sit in that bench or in that seat in that classroom. So it's a very narrow lens of the learning community that UVic has that it can offer and extend its services to, its educational programs to. So I like to sort of put that as a point. We need to move beyond, especially brick and mortar universities, and many of you are here today, move beyond that narrow lens of the learner and where the learner must be. It's a very centralized, centric-oriented design that we have. This is a picture of a vice president's workspace for a multinational telecom company. 4 of the 5 days a week, he works there. Video conferences with people all over, from WebEx or whatever different modality that they may be joining in, or Skype. But this is a workplace of one person, one executive. This is the workspace of a professor in French, Catherine Cause, and this is her sailboat. So this is where she does her learning and she does her work. So there's a variety out there. This is my office at UVic. You'll notice there's a little goldfish package on the left. I don't eat goldfish. That belongs to my daughter, who's actually doing a homeschooling sort of setup. I don't teach her. She's part of a sort of different personalized program. So this is a different kind of idea of where she's learning. Her bum and seat moves to the program where they have her go in a couple times a week, get direction from her teacher. Sometimes she works from home and has a friend over. They do learning together. So I also have a learning desk in my home office, which is messy. I just wanted to share that as an idea of where we have to imagine where people are and where they want to be, and they want flexibility. So I put out a hashtag, why that seat, and I've invited people to sort of tweet out to that images of their own learning space off campus. And in some cases, that's their only choice for where they can learn. And so look to that model. This is another video I took just down at the beach. I was taking pictures and videos of my kids. And my eldest started talking a little bit about how she saw learning.
I just wonder, well, why schools have to be like stuck up in a little classroom? Because if they go on field trips all the time, they'll see all these weird things like that they wonder, and you can't really, and then they'll ask people about it, and then they'll learn stuff new. Like if you're stuck up in a little classroom, they won't see any of this stuff, and probably when you're older, like 20-something, you'll probably wonder why it's there.
What's your question right now?
Well, why are there holes in this log? Why are there little tiny holes in there? Was it like animals that used to live in there? Or just little rocks or something?
Let's try and find out. So in the K-12 sector, there is a lot of reinvention happening in how learning takes place. So there's superintendents who are quitting their jobs, starting charter schools, looking at what's inquiry-based learning and personalized learning, and trying to move away from that shift of brick and mortar face-to-face, or you go in an online program. There is some room in between these two opposite places where we can actually thrive and support our learners in thriving that way. But also the way we put together our programs, there tends to be a lot of structure. We may call it scaffolding, but sometimes that actually is delimiting for the options and the passions for learners and what they want to do, what they're interested in, and the modalities in which they want to present their work. So I thought this was an interesting study that kids whose time is less structured are better able to meet their own learning goals. So this kind of, we know this. We know that, and especially with adult learners, they like to have a little bit of control over their learning. And it's just a human, natural instinct. So we need to look at ways we can support that control in a variety of needs. So the Thai Lab, very fortunate that I got over $1 million to put into infrastructure, renovation, software, hardware, people. And it allowed me to have a play space, that Google 20% time where you can try to see how things can work, how to hack together, bringing in people remotely. So our satellite classroom is actually one of the twos there with the round tables. I'm not a huge fan of the board design because that's more of your meeting space for executives. It's not a very good learning space unless it's a very small group. But we need to have more of these places where you can really kind of hack and remix the post-secondary learning experience and try new things. And I'm very lucky that UVic had this to play with. So I've learned that hardware sucks to work with, but software is fantastic, and I'm very happy that there are more and more solutions available today than what I had way back. I think this was 2007, 8 that we finally got things sort of built up. But software solutions now have made the work that I was struggling with so much easier. I'm going to skip over some sort of foundational stuff of the rapid panels or expanded pieces of personalized and predictive why. It's a talk that Brad had me do at the University of Saskatchewan, and it's archived. You can catch up on some of that there if you want a little bit more in depth. So there I talked about 4 movements in education. I like to correct it and go, oh, actually no, 5 movements in education. And I'll gleam over, those topics, but I'm going to focus on the 5th one, which is access. And it's the theme of our conference today. So I had to shove in the assessment because that's our missing piece. I'm going to keep the arrows there because assessment is what I would consider the major obstacle and driver of why we're stuck in the boxes that we're stuck in modalities, in curriculum, and it's really important that we look at change in how we do assessment. So the first piece is on personalization. And again, the little clip from my daughter there, things that are happening in K-12 that I find quite revolutionary. I'd love to see that happen more at the higher education sector. But personalization is making it meaningful and making it where the learner is. I looked up the term federation the other day, and it's sort of like, bringing together of groups or paths. I like to sort of look at redefining the university as a federation of learning journeys that are personalized to learners, kind of like an RSS feed will bring in a variety of posts from something. How can we move towards a federation of learning journeys and not a top-down, follow through, our processes that, we have built up and we think that you need to do. So learning paths can be where everyone has to follow the same footsteps, and they have to have the exact same shared kind of experience in a course. I've moved away from that to what do you want to do? You can all do completely different things. In fact, please do so. But there's the idea of, well, how do we have assessment? How do we compare an apple with an orange? Well, we can't. We have to learn that, especially with grading. We can't. So, I like this little cartoon. I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who do it exactly as I say. We don't want this. We don't want this in higher education, and our students don't want this either. So, my memories of Biology 11 was about memorization of terms, pieces of, whatever it was that we were studying, label the parts. And we know from research that people can't retain that. And we know we have access to all that anyhow when we have a device in our hands. So why are we doing things that way? Why are we having exams that assess, do you know that content? We got to throw that away and focus on the process and focus on the personalization. So this is my learning story. That was me in Math 10. That was basically 2 hours before I took a Math 10 final exam, where I failed it because I didn't study and I wasn't motivated and I had no passion. Because it was all very structured in high school then, every little thing that we had to do. On the right, that's me now with the degrees on the wall, the CFI award, and you know what? In regards to math, I got 9 in structural equation modeling at University of Alberta, multivariate analysis. Math's not a problem with me. So capability was there. It's just that how we were designing K-12 learning was very teacher-centric. And for people who are wanting to have voice, people who are bright and find this content boring at the level it's being done in, basically will disengage. And so when we act, interested in student engagement, we really actually need to look really critically at every little thing that we do and why we set up university the way we set up university. So that was my attendance record in high school, grade 11 or 12, and it was 90 days missed by the end of the school year. So fortunately, my mom was supportive of it. I had these cookie notes, so I got 0 out of 0s. But it didn't actually harm my path. I still proceeded on to higher education. But some people will actually say, well, you need to have the learning from school. I don't know. I don't know if that Biology 11 and all those terms I had to memorize actually really did that much for me. So we're moving towards more personalization in our curriculum in PC for high school, where we want to allow them to choose a little bit more about what they want to learn. And I'm thrilled about it. How do we do it in post-secondary? Hashtag why school is interesting. It's both from Bill Richardson's book, questioning why we're doing things the way we're doing, but it's also used by youth saying, I hate school. So it's kind of inspiring and depressing at the same time when you follow that hashtag. And this was something I typed out in high school, and the dot matrix printer was printing it out. It's a quote from Albert Einstein. The worst thing seems to be for a school principally to work with methods of fear, force, and artificial authority. Such treatment destroys the healthy feelings, the integrity, and self-confidence of the pupils. All that it produces is a servile thud. Now, in university, we don't have to worry about the fear, force stuff, but artificial authority, I think we have a very good slam dunk. We need to move away from the concept of the expert and then the classroom and make it flat. That we have a lot of experts coming in with different strengths, different voices, and to bring that in to our campus and to help create a learning community is so important. So I like to value what Albert Einstein said. So curriculum, this is my child in a box at home. It boxes us. And I know we try to do it to meet standards or to make sure things are covered, but at the same time, it's sort of undoing our practice and it's undoing the engagement of learners at the same time. Even how we present it, we can still identify outcomes, but we can also empower the learner to say, here they are. You find your way to show that you do it. And that's what the Pacific School for Innovation and Inquiry is doing on the coast, is they're actually letting learners start with, what do you like? Like horses? Write about horses. We'll count that for language arts. You want to do science? Contextualize it, veterinary kind of stuff and cells in a horse. But map it upwards. So that is trusting the learner. So we have to look at how are we going to trust learner and provide different kinds of supports. It's more one-on-one that we're moving to. This is being done in, I think this is like grade 1 or 2. Students had choice in a Salt Spring Island school. Sign up for the book you want. Not, no, class, you come, I'll sit here, and I'm going to read this book to you all. It was providing choice at a very young age. And I love this. It's powerful because I taught in elementary school. You don't see this very often, where the students at a young level get choice. And we have to ask, are we truly giving choice? I hear people say, oh, but they can take different electives, we're giving them some more freedom. In those courses, are we giving them choice in what they're doing? We choose the textbook. I've started to move towards, what textbook do you want? If you want to go and find another textbook, go for it. I'll have to approve it. But when I'm choosing, there's a variety, and frankly, there are many that do well. And if we have different books being brought in as reading clubs and people sharing, I think we're going to get a little bit more of diverse knowledge coming in. Different voices and aspects of what we're talking about. So moving away from that one size fits all. Everyone knows this. Who actually came up with this? Because I've seen sort of like, I don't know, the different speakers, or there's a Chinese philosopher as well that's credited. This one credits Glasser. But whoever said it, that we learn 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, 70% of what we discuss. I don't know if this is really research-based, but it's a saying. 80% of what we experience and 95% of what we teach others. So why are we teaching them? And I've moved away from teaching my students. In fact, they teach most of the time. They don't even necessarily have me there when they teach. So Steve Jobs' authority in teaching, another quote. I was reading his biography. Quote, I was kind of bored for the first few years, referring to school, so I occupied myself by getting into trouble. It also soon became clear that Jobs, by both nature and nurture, was not disposed to accept authority. I encountered authority of a different kind than I ever had encountered before, and I did not like it. And they really got me. They came close to really beating any curiosity out of me. So, just putting it out there, how are we actually going to let them drive their curiosity? So I do teacher-less sessions now in my teaching. I do chapter remixes where they pick a chapter that they're interested in. It can even be from a different book, different edition, and they come in and they actually present to the class in whatever modality they want, however they want to shape it. And it's exciting to be in that class because you never know what you're going to get. Date night, right? Oh, date night. Right? We want to have spontaneity, and we want to have some excitement, and we want to have diverse voices. So when the comment was made the other day, or I guess it was yesterday, about books, right? But Pearson or whoever providing all of these slide decks with it, an assessment stack. So I'll talk about assessment in a minute, but well, my students create those slide decks, or they create them in however way, videos or whatever means that they play with. They're actually doing that, and they're driving the class. I am there as the member checker. Is this actually, correct, thorough, all those kind? That's my job. It's not my job to come up with it and spoon feed them, because I'm also going to disengage them if I do that. So Claire Majors at the University of Alberta, and she has a new book coming out. I don't know if it's 2000, I think it's 2014 anytime now. It could be 2015, but it's in press, actually. I should have put it in press. Teaching Online, a research guide to instructional change. She talks about, she profiles some of my work on multi-access and learning pathways and some courses that I have that basically model each of these different types. The image on the left is the centralized course model. And I'm not talking in terms of access modality here. This is sort of like kind of the curriculum pathways. It's the teacher saying, everyone read this book, do this thing, and you're all going to go through that same kind of experience that is around what I'm telling you to do. The second one, the middle one, is the decentralized approach, and that's where they're having some say in different topics or concepts, or they may be working more groups on that, and you're kind of facilitating those different options you've allowed or given, depending on how you do it. And the one on the right is the mesh design. And this is how I love to teach. You actually don't need a lot of in-class time per se. Gather together for a synchronous session, and I bring in my face-to-face and my online together at the same time, and have them report and share what they're doing. It's fascinating. I get so much more out of my classes because they own it. So, well, I love that. This is the sort of Google space for my daughter, doing her mapping of whatever her passion-based learning is, wherever she's doing it at. And she maps it upwards. And this is what the Pacific School is doing. The curriculum provided from the Ministry of Education, great. The teacher's job is basically go, what are you doing? And I use the term selfie my learning, because we need to get students into the habit of not, with a friend, but this is what I'm doing, or this is a screen capture, like capture it and make that portfolio, and it's the instructor's job to map it up to the curriculum outcomes and say, did you meet it? If not, you need to do this. So I like this approach. FIPPA issues, but anyway. So this is the Pacific School I was talking about, innovation inquiry in Salt Spring Island, the Gulf Islands. Superintendent quit and created this school over a year ago. It's going great. I find it quite exciting. You can find it at learningstorm.org. But it goes into a little bit of the differences between traditional schooling and what they do. So the differences from subjects, curriculum, design, grouping, environment, connections, and mode of access. He actually tells me that they do multi-access in their design. Do they have video conferencing or that kind of piece? No. But the student doesn't have to come in. They can learn from home. They're not absent if they're learning from home. They could be not home. They could be at the museum. They could be at the university. But they're going to be personalized their learning. The learning journey takes place where that student is. In the words of my daughter, I can't ever skip school or miss school because school is where I'm at. Yeah. Right. So, how do we provide some of this freedom in higher ed? It was really struggling to kind of work with the K-12 brick and mortar school that she was in when she was facing school refusal through, she was struggling with some anxiety issues with getting into the school space. And try to sort of explain to them, like, why don't you have an open day book? What are you covering in the day? At least you could work on it and not fall behind, but it's just brick and mortar face-to-face only, right? So we finally got the school into photocopying to PDF to email, and emailed her Evernote. So then we actually could get whatever was being done in the day at home. And it's easy to do this stuff at home. You don't even need to have this, but a day book, because if we know what the outcomes are, content's everywhere, apps, websites, YouTube, you name it, we can cover it. So, and probably a lot faster and more efficiently than if it was in the math size, sit in the classroom, and most of the times on management, right? So, also personalization. Open principle, we all know what the open principle is, so I won't spend too much time on it. But tapping into, I mentioned John Malinsky yesterday. He's an open access research advocate, amazing person to follow. The quote I love from him is, the means of communication should be held by the public. The very basis of how we connect should be a public utility. That principle we are trying to bring to research and scholarship. So we need to push that, because I've heard people say that when we're teaching closed, it's because we're worried about copyright, and so we need to kind of hide that. Well, if we start working towards students creating content, and the faculty or sessional instructor being the person to sort of, view and kind of, be the moderator of the curation of the harvest of learning from the class, well, that's fantastic. Does it really matter what the textbook is? Or let's look at open textbooks that students and instructors can make together, or faculty can make together. But we need to make sure that our discourse is public. I do have an archive. Again, right now, we have a little work, what we call a project chartery thing to change our TILAB website, update it, because the audiovisual people gave us Flash, and anyway. But there is an archive of our John Malinsky talk there, and it's fascinating, and it's like poetic to listen to him speak, and it's moving, And if you aren't clear or sure at all about open research or open textbooks, please do yourself a favor and get your librarians, your administrators, your deans, whoever, to watch his archive. So I'm going to give a props to Clint Lalonde in the back. I think everyone knows Clint. So he's sort of the open textbook guru, and I'd like to also give props to the work that BC Campus is doing in helping to move towards adopting open access. Because with things that are closed, it can get more complicated in supporting personalized learning and true connected classrooms. So we do stuff like having WordPress blogs. I haven't been in an LMS for maybe 10 years. I don't teach that way, and I don't support LMS being done. I actually think it's problematic that when we have a new faculty member, let's say coming from sciences and they've never taught before, they come and they land on the learning systems or teaching learning centers or front steps and say, can you help me? I've got to teach online. Great, we'll take you over to this closed space, and this is how you're going to, and hide your copyright stuff, and we're basically supporting a system by moving that way. It's closed. So we need to look at how do we say, no, let's go over here to this table instead and talk about how you're going to publish open because we have a policy, how you're going to have open education because we want to make sure your resources are available. Here's the WordPress space, or here's how we're going to make your onioning of what's private for student privacy, but what's going to be in the bulk open. Why don't we do that? Why are we walking over to this table when they walk up to us? Or why are we putting them into a lecture hall? It's never taught before. Here's your podium. Here's the, waft of students up there. Teach. Right. Well, basically you're saying lecture. And this is what their understanding of teaching is going to be, because that's what we give to them. You can teach large classes in other ways. Team-based learning. UBC's, there's a fellow who just did a book from the Faculty of Applied Science Teaching Learning Center there. Why don't we actually introduce them to different spaces in different ways? So the connectedness piece, teachers need to unlearn. And I learn a lot, and unlearn a lot, I should say, through my PLN, through being on Twitter and reading what other people are doing on their blogs. And it's really important that we move towards this because they show pictures, they'll give archives, live streams. You get to basically look into their personal private spaces or their institutional spaces on what they're doing. And it's a way to grow and stay current. So for me, that's really important because I need to stay current or I'm kind of going to lose my credibility. So for learners, they use this to how to engage in the inquiry process. Because if it's not about going to the tip where the expert prof or a sessional instructor is going to teach me what to do, and I'm going to be going and finding resources and curating, well then I better be connected. I better be able to crowdsource. I better find all these wonderful nuggets that are out there and bring them in. There's this fortune cookie kind of little piece there. You would do well in the field of computer technology. I saw that on Flickr and I went, oh, that's so perfect. Because when I was younger, I was interested in ed tech, and I was like, oh, you're interested in ed tech. Well, I'm interested in gardening, and but it was this thing that was, over here, and that's not the case now. It really isn't. Everyone needs to be interested in computer technology because it's pervasive and it's actually transformative, and it's the way we can support teaching and learning in the best way possible. That information is everywhere, and it's great that it is. I'm thrilled that it is, but we're not changing. We're still teaching the way it used to be when it was closed. So yeah, we need to move towards that. And the remix that I'm having students do, I don't call them chapter summaries, I call them chapter remixes. They're doing it in different modalities, and we can basically have a summary of a 900-page textbook that I'd love to get through. No way they're going to get through that in one term. It's very heavy reading, too. Well, we'll just have everyone jigsaw it up, remix it, and we finish the book together in Cole's Notes version. So different ways that we can do teaching and learning. And this is the key, I think, and we need to get around FIPA. We can't have the, oh, I'm in enforcement and compliance. No, can you actually focus on how to move past that? And in BC, there's a higher ed group that's looking at privacy and how we're going to actually do the consent and get it done. Not, no, we can't do it. So I like the can-do people. This is one of them. She's a middle school teacher in, they've changed the name. It used to be Calgary Science School in Calgary. But doing things so differently. It was so inspiring. And this is why connecting to kid helps me invigorate how we see higher ed and what we can do in higher ed. She's open with her Pro-D. You know, I was in the session with VIU yesterday. It was a great session on teaching scholars and all that. These teachers put out their Twitter handles, and they had a QR code and a hashtag. They had a Pro-D challenge for themselves. They identified whatever their inquiry was, and that was going to their blog where they're sharing what they're doing. They were modeling learning. What do you know, right? So our instructors need to model learning. That means they also need to show vulnerability, that you don't just, become the expert when you get granted the PhD and it's done. That you know, by doing research and the scary, oh, research is scary. No, research is learning. So let's just, let's keep learning. And I'll show you how I learn and how we share our learning. And, that is scholarship. So I love that. We should bring it back. Augmented reality and those kind of things were brought into their school. This is like the treasure hunt I have in my home where my kids can find the hotspots. So there's different tools and different ways. These hotspots can link to YouTube videos, and in fact they do. In some schools you'll go up and you'll find a hotspot. It'll take you to a YouTube video of a science experiment that kid did. So it's not the 2D poster boards. Poster presentations, conference presentations, poster boards should never just be paper anymore, or plastic, or whatever it's printed on. They need to be multi-dimensional and sharing links and sharing videos and sharing whatever. This was for my introverted daughter, the one who wouldn't speak in class. We had to tell the teachers not to call on her, right? We created a blog for her to push out some of her learning reflections. She didn't sleep until almost midnight that night. She couldn't sleep. And I, closed the door. You just gotta go to sleep. And she was writing notes and pushing them under the door. And this was one of them. Please, can I do my blog? Right? She found a channel to have a voice. So where is the voice of all the students in higher ed? All of the students, not the extroverts, not the ones who like to speak out, all of them. And so blogging is one way, and yes, we do need to make those blogs public. We can have them use avatars, other terms or words for their names, but let's get it out there and let's get it so we can actually share. This was the faculty retreat that I chaired almost 2 years ago. And it was evaluations were anonymous on Google Forms, and it was reported as like the best retreat ever. We had a laptop per table. We had everyone bring their tablets, and we had Google Docs where we could share. We had prompts, different documents for different themes, the international table, the graduate studies table, the undergrad program table, and the people who couldn't make it, because many people have conferences and conflicts, could come into the Google Doc and have a voice. Why do we create these face-to-face events that you have to be there to have a voice? Why you don't, it's wonderful, we're recording this. Yes, right? Everything we do, remember Walensky? The nature of our communication should be a public utility. So we need to curate what we have and not make it about what time is it? It's a Tuesday, October 28th. You have to be in this room. We need to work on layering as much as possible. So the nice thing about that, it wasn't the big paper poster boards that we doodle on in pens. Someone rolls up, walks away with it, and what we know from meetings is that people forget a lot. So unless they were taking their own notes, and a lot of people aren't because they're just conversing, they walk away feeling kind of dismembered. What happened there? Well, those Google Docs kept being changed. Right? People could still edit and tweak, and it was a track that everyone got to walk away with and have visible. So that was another sort of rich piece of access. And we have a new dean who just started. Okay, what's the lay of the land? What's going on? Well, we had a retreat, and here's everything right here in a Google Doc, you know, with table of content one and the link to so many other sub-ones. There you go. Here's packaged for you. You weren't there, but we still have our, you know, collective learning visible and not summarized by one person through their lens, right? So that happens many times. And I talked about this at USask a little bit. So I did my PhD in educational psychology. I took almost every single course that they had from the measurement group. Does anyone know Todd Rogers here? Brilliant, yeah, brilliant. Observed score equals true score plus error. Anyone familiar with this equation? Because it's an equation. It's test theory. So true score is what I know about something. It's in here. It's in my space, my thinking, my heart, my soul, whatever. How I pull together what I know is my true score. Observed score is how we try to assess it. So an exam, you know, an essay. So whatever we do to assess someone, it's their true score plus error. And there's so many different ways that that error happens. It can be cultural. I don't know what you mean by this. This doesn't happen where I'm from. I don't know that word, language. It can be I'm tired, I'm stressed, anxiety comes up, and then when we know, like from research again, anxiety turns off basically your ability to think. So it's problematic how we do assessment. So standardized exams are supposed to have a reliability of 0.9 and above. Otherwise, we can't place people. We have to be confident that we know where they sit. Teacher-made assessments have a reliability of 0.4, which means throw it out. That's what we learned from the measurement experts. So I don't think university instructors are any different than K-12 teachers. We're still just making up our own things. Do an essay, do this. It's completely subjective. Inter-rater reliability is poor. So we are the entire foundation of higher ed, of how we accept people, how we assess them, how we give scholarships. All of this stuff is based on, excuse the language, crap. So I'm thrilled when we see people move towards pass-fail, move towards, you know, what's your passion? How do we support inquiry? And how do we move away from this? And I saw scores and grades come up in this conference even, and it's like, can we move away from that? Because it's the wrong place for looking at student outcomes. Okay? We have to look at those outcomes in other ways. Because, yeah, as I say, active O is harming T. So remember that kid failing the Math 10 exam? Because I'm just sick of it. I'm not going to do what you're going to tell me to do. Typical high school. Well, university students are still, the younger ones have some similar traits. But the active how O was happening and how curriculum and how we're doing what we're doing was happening in high school made me push back, made me skip school. And how's our attendance in university? You have to ask, right? People skip a lot in university too. Why? So, is the active O a threat to validity? And it is the act of observation, how we do assessment, an error in and of itself. And I think we have to really, really consider those questions. So I like to look towards potential, which I think for students to reach their full potential, we need to support personalized learning, connectedness in how they learn, openness in how we do our learning community and how they can access resources, assessment for learning in different ways, and access. And this is my favorite piece, is the access. We'll talk about my work in multi-access learning. But we don't need to design our classrooms like this anymore. And in fact, whenever I see a university building under construction, I cringe with fear. Oh my gosh, are they going to be putting in another big lecture hall? So, are we going to be doing testing this way still? Are we going to be causing suicide? breakdowns. I've had my own lab assistants in the lab. I bring them in from all across campus, different disciplines. And yeah, I've had people go MIA and end up in hospital from stress. So it's personal. It's important that we consider something's gone wrong when we are bringing in trauma dogs to post-secondary. I am so serious. We are so blinded in the system that we're in. And that's why I bring you back to the little video of my daughter talking about, why are we held up in the school when we can learn, ask questions everywhere, right? Why are we creating stress and putting all these boxes and, spotlights on how we do our teaching and learning? So this stuff is the beautiful stuff when you see them hanging in the library, chit-chatting, collaborating. But also, do they actually have to be in that library? Could they be in a different library? Could they be in an online library? Could they be doing that where they're at in their learning journey? So I had to put in some really cheesy clip art. I thought I'm going to just buy some cheesy clip art and make this point across: access. Because we need to value that the learner owns their learning journey, and that also includes geography or time. And this doesn't mean online learning that I'm pushing towards, because people have different views and different preferences, and I've learned that. And it's almost bimodal, where people want online and others want face-to-face. So anytime we pick a modality, we're pissing someone off. Our registration is very restricted in this way. We have physical accessibility. Thank goodness for Rick Hansen, right? We've done a lot of work in making sure our buildings are accessible. When you go to the elevator, there's a bar there. It says, well, stop on every floor. I thought, right on. So that wasn't there. I remember actually, when I was younger, there was not. That's why Rick Hansen had to do so much work on making sure our buildings actually, they couldn't go in them. It shocks me that there was a time where people in wheelchairs could not go in a building, and a building of higher ed even. So we've come a long way, yes, but this is just one level of accessibility that we've done, I hope, a fairly good job at. Remote and rural, we still suck. And it's saddening to me because we have also to consider brand and programs, and also narrow expertise, which is only at a certain university and a certain program with a certain professor who does that work. And if you're interested in that at remote and rural sort of being your space, tough beans. Because that person's maybe not publishing open and may not be teaching in a way other than serving who's sitting in this class at this time. So opportunities may be to go to Phoenix, to Athabasca, to finding, putting together a piecework of online courses. And I think that's wrong, because this space we're standing in here is funded by taxpayers. All taxpayers, many of them are remote and rural. So we need to look at how to support that better. The other angle is special needs and anxiety. I was shocked. It happened to my own child. I was shocked to find out that 40%, the stat was 40% in the US, 42% in Canada, have anxiety disorders in children and youth. Not just, oh, I feel anxious, disorders. That's not a niche. It feels like an epidemic. And whenever I start to open up about it, the number of people who DM me, come up after, tell their own stories, it's huge. So I know many of you here are probably struggling with this too, and have found ways to get around it. But we are creating, again, classrooms for extroverts, for people who are okay being with lots of stimulus around, and also with lots of people in that space. That is not a space that's inclusive for many with special needs or anxiety. Time, again, come and seat this time now, or you miss the opportunity to be part of that learning group. So we need to find, and people ask, do you do flipped classroom? Well, no, I like to do live and archive, and then sort of flip for the people who miss it, and then use other modalities for engagement. And then there's web accessibility, which if we go that route where it's the textbook and all these other pieces, or creating PowerPoint stacks, then you have to do all these translations. Well, you know what? If we actually blast all that away and let the learners sort of create stuff and personalize their learning, it makes it a lot easier to sort of have that creation and the standards put in the class community that way. So I think building up and doing the instructional design so pre-planned, a year in advance, I mean, that goes against Paulo Freire, educational philosopher, who is like, how can you plan your learning when you don't know your learners? I've moved to not having a course out online until my first class. I have a draft, some Google Docs, we talk about it, we mix it up, and I've come out with better ideas because of that, like the chapter remixes, you know, and I've suggested the teacherless sessions, they like that. And so we do a lot of different ideas because it takes that input. And you know what, they're more engaged in the class because it represents their voice. So, yeah. Are you ready for the biggest obstacle to accessibility? It's us in higher ed. It's many of our professors or our deans or provosts. Yes, we're a destination in place. We need to move beyond that to say, have you considered open? Have you considered teaching in a way that is either online or multi-access? I don't even like online because in a brick-and-mortar university, we have our face-to-face learners and they prefer that modality. So we don't say ditch it and go online because then we're not pleasing them. So this is where I move towards multi-access learning, to try and find ways and designs to bring both into the same learning community. And the more power we give to the learner, the less it matters if they miss a class. It's not about me. They can engage with me in many other ways, and they can engage with each other. So even that class is not as important. And so we have to deal with this issue of control. And it may be some hard-ass policies coming out. And I'd like to see people have guts to pass those policies. Because this is what we typically have done, face-to-face or online, period. So like I said, each time we choose one, we're either blocking access to another group or we're ignoring learning preferences. So in our banner, we have like face-to-face enrollment. Here's a course you could take, date, room, time. Online enrollment, it says O&L, and that's kind of it. Then we have face-to-face and online. Ooh, we're doing blended. I've done blended for 10 years. It hasn't changed access to my courses because that still means you have to come face-to-face. And that's not going to be possible for the remote rural or all, like I said, all the other. It's not a solution. It's serving more flexible needs of our on-campus learners for sure, but we're still not there. So that's where I brought in multi-access, and I tweeted in 2013, I think blended's a dead term. I hope that's going to be the case because I'm hoping we can move towards, again, unraveling this thing, and it's not just from an access modality thing, it's in all these other pieces. It may be 25 years, but I like to think that blended is going to be a dead term. And I'm calling it multi-access, but there's an American sort of research hub at the University of Michigan, Michigan State University, they're calling it synchromodal, and in Australia they're calling it blend-sync. And it's fantastic. I felt like I was the crazy person on an island, coming up with my crazy ideas just because I had a big lab and I could, I thought this isn't going to be generalizable. But it is. So moving towards supporting learner agency is, I think, what we share. And this is the question that we will have to answer to students. Do I have to go to school your way? Can you listen to me and my voice and my needs to do it my way? And how do we meet the needs of the many ways that are out there? So on the access front, 45 minutes was cited as the breakpoint of if they would prefer to come face-to-face for drive. If the drive was less than 45 minutes, they would prefer to be face-to-face in the classroom. it's beyond 45 minutes, then they want to do it online. So we have to look at the realities and the logistics of, what learners need in terms of preference, but also reality. And the impact of choice. So I have students who are, creating opportunities and creating programs designed for themselves, picking courses based on modalities not on interest. And I think that's wrong, and that's what we've created in post-secondary. And I think we need more work to sort of show why that's the case. I'm from University of Alberta, actually I am from University of Alberta, but University of British Columbia as well. And I'm going to sort of be able to take a shot at my own university. But we basically you click on programs, graduate, undergraduate, international, professional development, online and distance ed. Double-barreled item, using my test theory language. What if I want graduate and I want online? So is this meaning this is face-to-face? So I'd like us to work towards just having our programs and accessibility being any way that we do it. This is my 2009 proceeding. It's actually not a very good one because I was writing a big culinary grant. I wanted to go to Hawaii, and so I crammed it out. So just if you look at it, just know that context. But emergence of choice in multi-access learning environments. It's like 2014 now. We're seeing some growth, and I'm so thrilled about that. I have a paper on one pilot in our BEd program that was multi-access. 9 in the classroom, 16 or 17 remote. We brought them together. So you can read up on that if you just Google Merlot, Jolt, and Irvine. But basically, this is the crux of multi-access. When you pick a modality, course delivery, and I want to change to course access. I hate the word delivery now because it implies that we're the ones giving something and not that we're benefiting the other way. We block off access from learners. When we choose multi-access, it's truly the only way that we can let everyone come. And it's had a huge impact on our enrollment as well. So the idea also is that it can span into open. So you can have your face-to-face group, right, sitting here. You can have, this could have the faces of videos of students coming in live. We can have asynchronous spaces where we gather, either closed through private channels or in social media or Twitter hashtags, which we use heavily, and open learning. As much as you toggle open, we can actually start bridging the two together. Our software and hardware needs to be doing a better job of the onioning, not the either or. And so I'm hoping we can move towards that. So this is the Blend Sync group in Australia. They got a pan-Australian government grant to seek out models of multi-access. And some of them are immersive worlds, where the classroom here would have a big screen showing a virtual world that they would be engaging in, and all the other off-site people were coming into that world as avatars, and you see them walking around, and they had a video in the virtual world that was streamed in the classroom. Bizarre. Anyway, so they're finding out where these little pockets exist so we can, learn more about them. They've created a handbook, publication, so it's a great site, blendsync.org, without the H. And then this is the Synchromodal group at Michigan State. So it's being done. I went to the Campus Technology Conference, did a presentation there, learned that, was it Michigan State, Boston University? Like, it's happening in pockets all over the place. Last week alone, I got contacted by the Justice Institute of BC, UBC, and Algonquin College, all about going to multi-access. So people are starting to play with this, and I'm thrilled that there's momentum in playing. We're all going to fall on our faces at different times, but we need to share our findings so we can get to a good design model. This is not a great design model. UBC Faculty of Medicine has a distributed program. They run all, if you want to be a medical doctor, you have to go there for offerings in our province. But they created a satellite site in Victoria called the Island Medical Program, one at UNBC, and one in, I think it's UBC, I was at Kelowna or Kamloops. But they basically connected everyone by video in a closed video conferencing space. It's not really multi-access. Learners haven't been able to join in from wherever they're at. But the idea was doctors came to Vancouver and they never left. So now they get to stay put at one of these satellite sites, and they're finding they're staying put. So success. The guy in the top left is their audiovisual support person, and he was coming in on Jabra from his home. And it made me kind of take a, why can't the learners do that? Because if they're sitting in a lecture hall, even the kind of design that we could do in a lecture hall is still kind of being lectured to, so why be in that seat? So this kind of mixing has been done forever. This is Grand Yellowhead School Division. They've been bringing in by BC, as sort of the experts. But we've always kind of done this sort of one line, one feed, not giving the same flexibility to the learner. It's always the guest speaker coming in. I tried developing and hacking through buying a coordinate for $75,000 and seeing how we could, jerry-rig mobility before we had the software like Zoom and Blue Jeans and all that jazz. I've been at this for a while. And then it was so frustrating working with that. And then I'm chair of the Collaborative Technologies Working Group with BCNet, and they had Blue Jeans that just, these kind of tools were just coming out. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can stop trying to jerry-rig and, use this tool to come into our VC-enabled classrooms. But if you look at, where's that seat, or why that seat, the president's working from his garage. So, home, BCNet video conference unit where the staffers are, but home, and there's UVic, home, and there's an office. We've got, in the real world of employment out there, we've got people working all over the place. And people want to learn all over the place. So we need to move towards that. There was a spread in the Globe and Mail a couple years ago that covered our pilot. It was really great. It was a whole thing on open e-learning platforms in Canada. And I thought, we kind of screwed up because that wasn't open, because we had a cap to the numbers of people we could bring in via Blue Jeans. So it wasn't that, it was flexible, but it wasn't open. I would love to see us have a design where we have our registered learners and then open learners being able to fishbowl or trade in seats. But again, the software has to get there. So this is a typical education seminar face-to-face. This was the pilot we studied. And this was it's not fancy, but our jerry-rig solution of, here we go, we'll bring people in. We chose that space because the furniture was flexible and not the boardroom style. They've since moved to the university campus systems, but the con there, it's boardroom style again. So how do we, we need to look at how do we support this in ways that if we're going to expand, they adopted it based on the success and the evaluations and student feedback, and the retired principals want to teach multi-access instead of face-to-face, which is great, because there was a petition actually that got the department to move that way. And they want to teach that way now. So I thought that's wonderful. I mean, you don't have to have tech skills. You don't have to have blood, sweat, and tears crying, to get something up there. But master teachers that these people are, they realize the limitations in the infrastructure. The last 9 people were shown. So what about the 10th? They're off the screen. You can't see them. And so different software will have ribbons where you can scroll through webcams. But they actually use popsicle sticks, wrote students' names on it, and they slid it aside when someone talked, so they could know who didn't and figure out how to engage them. So I thought that was interesting. This is a Thai grad cohort where I have 22 people from across the province and 4 in class. And I chose it that way. And it allows us to have a mix. I could have had more local, but my heart was breaking when I was looking at applicants and going, you're in Port Alice. And I was getting DM'd and phoned and can I please get in because my opportunities sucked. It's restricted in Port Alice. There's no university there. And it's great. They're really loving it, and they love the video. When they moved to Collaborate, we did one open session in Collaborate because it was unlimited. We could bring a lot of people in, and they loved that. But at the end, I said, do you want to stay in Collaborate or do you want to go back to Blue Jeans? And the chat went on fire. No! Back in Blue Jeans, get off of this. They felt like dismembered or headless. Their avatars were gone, and they were just text representing their name And the real estate's all about the content on the screens interface. So I thought that was interesting. So how do we move towards replicating face-to-face in an online way? I know I'm getting close to the end, but I want to talk about the Bueller effect, what I call it, and laughter. It's really important. Yeah, Bueller, Ferris Bueller. Date myself too. And this is why I came up with teacherless sessions and also open mics. The Bueller effect is where I had a session going on that was a teacherless one, and I popped in. I didn't even have to be there. And this wonderful dialogue was happening. And then I showed Valerie Irvine just joined, right? And I thought, it's like, soap being dropped in oily water. And still doing the facilitating, we have a great group, but still it turned into me having to facilitate or prompt a lot, or having to push people to try to do that. And I muted my mic to answer a door, and conversation, and I thought, I stood out of the camera line, listened, and it was wonderful and awesome, but I wasn't there. And this is, in accordance with the skillful teacher text on, how to support these communities, and me being there ruined it. So we need to have teacher, and that's my design now. I'll have my class sessions, but I say you have to have teacherless sessions, and blog about who they were with, when they were, and if everyone's comfortable recording, then record it. I don't care how or where you do it. It could be in person with people outside of our class, right? In your workplace. Do it wherever. The other thing was laughter, because when I was teaching 336 on campus, undergrad blended class, I brought in a speaker to the face-to-face session from Vancouver on Skype, and he also shared his content via Collaborate. And the way the lab was set up, everyone had to have headsets, plugged into their own workstation. In there, I heard the pre-talk babble. He cracked a joke. I could hear the class laugh. Right. The next day, when a session had the same guest speaker, I thought I'd tune in from home office. Don't always sit on campus in my bum and seat. I tuned in, and I was the only one tuning in off-site, but it was dead. I didn't hear any of the babble. Right? The mics were muted, and that's the etiquette we do with video, right? And the laughter, I know that the jokes were taking place because I could hear him cracking a joke, but I wasn't going to laugh with no one around me, really. Like, it just is a little chuckle, but I couldn't hear the class laugh. And so when we have multi-access, and this is where the results of students are saying how it works, and they said it passes the test, I'm thinking the room-based face-to-face group laugh, and they have an open mic all the time. The remote people, they're all mic muted. And so in an online class, we wouldn't really hear much laughter. They laugh, you can see them laughing. They're hearing the face-to-face group laugh, and they're thinking they're part of the same laughter. And that is huge to get rid of, the Bueller effect, that sort of sense of it's kind of dead. And so either that, or we have to find ways to sort of designate 5 students in a class who are going to not shuffle or have ambient noise and laugh when it's time to laugh, or keep that humanity going. So how am I doing for time? 6 minutes. Okay. We do this stuff off campus. See, there's laughter. People do laugh in classes. In fact, we hope they do, because it means they're relaxed. And so our BEd students have been connecting with inner city schools and bringing them in to connect with our students to talk about what do you like. Oh, you know what? There's a university program for that. Think that way, please. Even though, it's a breakfast-fed school and lunch-fed school, think that way. I get goosebumps from that. But we can't design our end like this. So that's terrible design. This was better. It's our satellite space. We had Alec come in to teach our TIGRAD group. This is what it looks like for a person remote on their laptop. And you can slide the bar on, do you want full video or full content, or what's the ratio in between that you like. And this is a multi-access co-located research methods course where computer science ran a research methods course, and they loved the outline I had, and I was bringing in speakers, and so they wanted to wrap my course. So we did it co-located. Half of her classes were in her video conference room, her lab, and half were wherever, and same with mine. So it was interesting, and then the speaker was coming in, and I thought, it doesn't really matter where anyone is anymore. We just need to push these designs this way. Some people are doing like the robot-y piece coming in. I don't know, I haven't tried that yet. It seems a little weird and freaky, but you know, what's that guy from Russia who came in? The person who was leaking the files? I lost his name. Yeah, no, not Assange, but the other.
Snowden.
Yes, thank you. And so it's making into our media. And you know when it's making into our media, that maybe it's going to come this way. So, and then there's gaming. How many of you know Stampy Cat? Yay! Minecraft. My kids are wild on Minecraft. And so it's another place where they're all engaging from their different spaces in that, and we can do that as well. So one last point for learning design, and I've got some research findings that are more dry to look at, but I'll put it into the Dropbox case so you can view ahead and see the bullet summaries or read the paper. This is a high school. This is the Pacific School for Learning and Inquiry I talked to you about. So keep in mind, my daughter could not enter a brick and mortar narrow hallway and classrooms where you peer around and suddenly there's a whole group looking at you. It was too tense. She couldn't go into the middle school as well, same kind of thing. Can't go into that institutional space. She walked right into the Pacific School, and it's a high school. And she didn't even flinch, and she's looking around at the different stuff, and I thought, okay, there's design for you. That's universal design. And it's not necessarily about our web design or, accessibility of websites or curriculum, flexibility that way, differentiated. It's also in our space. And keep that stat, 40, 42%, and ask, why are we having absences? So what's interesting, I supported that alternate program. She actually went on stage at the Royal Theatre and performed dance. So I'm blown away going, well, social anxiety and performance anxiety were supposed to be, I think, that what I thought triggered this stuff. And I think that, well, that's social and that's performance in front of 1,000 people. So that can't be what was going on. I honestly think it's control and getting the creativity beaten out of you, just like Steve Jobs was talking about. So please think about control and how we do what we do. I know I've gone a little bit into overtime.